Hello, everybody, and welcome to the User Research Strategist podcast. My name is Nikki, and I am delighted today to be joined by Angie Amlani. Hi, Angie. It's so nice to have you here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, Nikki.
Yay! So we are covering a very important topic, especially in this day and age, which is a very weird phrase that probably ages me. But today we're going to be talking about the evolving identity of user researchers and strategists in this world of AI and what it means to be a new kind of researcher, a new kind of creative, a new kind of strategist in our field right now. And I think that this is going to be a very important topic to kind of discuss and uncover. So, Angie, I'm really excited to get your thoughts on this. Before we dive in, do you mind just introducing yourself to everybody who's listening?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also so excited to be chatting today, Nikki. I'm an executive director of research and strategy at one of the world's, leading product design agencies called MetaLab. So we are thought of as sort of the creative product team and force behind a lot of the products that folks have in their hands and use every day. Ubers, Slacks, the Nikes, so on and so forth. I've been there for about 7 years, and a big part of my job is overseeing a team of really smart user researchers, market researchers, product strategists, brand strategists, and making sure that, yeah, we're really helping our clients navigate the big product challenges and questions that they're facing in their roles.
Amazing. Anything that you like to do outside of the product world?
Ooh, great question, Nikki. Yes, I have multiple hobbies. I'm a squash player. I live also in the beautiful mountains of North Vancouver, British Columbia, so I hike with my two dogs. I also jam in a choir. So I've got all the different things that I love to be doing, and then I'm a really avid reader. So if I'm not outside and getting active, I'm reading many a book.
I love that. That's so, the jamming in a choir sounds absolutely delightful.
Dogs come to this choir, Nikki, just so you know. There's a singing pug that sings in the tenor section with their father, and it is just an absolute riot. I highly recommend people get out there and join a choir.
That is amazing. I get the first thing that my mind went to was huskies. You know how they like howl. So that was the first thing. I didn't think of a pug, but now that you've said pug, I can hear it almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. Oh, cool. That's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing. I think now hopefully people will be running to YouTube and maybe looking up pug choirs. That's a new channel to start.
Oh, man. Yep. Yep.
Oh, I love that. Amazing. So let's dive into our topic today. And I'm going to start us off with a more broad question, and then we can kind of see where we go from there. So, in your experience, I'm curious, how has AI changed the traditional user research role?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much that has changed,
Yeah.
but I think even before talking about what has changed, it's important to think about what the traditional UXR role
Yeah.
looked like. Because I think we forget how much of our time has been consumed by the mechanics of research, so like a typical project lifecycle, recruiting, moderating, transcribing, coding, synthesizing. That could take 3 to 8 weeks. And a really significant chunk of time had nothing to do with thinking, really, or sense making. It was labor. And I think AI has fundamentally disrupted that ratio. There's tools that automate transcription, affinity mapping, theme clustering, everything. And there's a real structural shift in how people's time is allocated. I think one of the things that I'm seeing the most is that the analytical surface area that a researcher can cover has expanded dramatically. You can run multiple interpretive lenses on the same data set. Someone on my team recently was working sort of on an end-to-end product redesign for a big enterprise. And after running a bunch of qualitative interviews and fielding a survey during their analysis process, they were able to look at the interviews and data through a jobs to be done frame,
Yeah.
then a behavioral frame and code, then a systems frame. And that kind of sort of analytical flexibility wasn't realistic before. So there's so much that has changed so quickly, and there's so much opportunity, I think, in this transition for researchers.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many things that I want to dig into just with that
Mm.
answer. But let's start first with the thinking part of things because
Mhm.
I I have this feeling that we didn't have enough time to think before. I don't think thinking was as important, or we didn't give enough time to it as we should have. Anybody, just generally, like in the product and in the digital and tech space, because everything is go, 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 go. And with this added complexity of AI almost like upping efficiency, it's like, well, now we need to be even more efficient. How has that impacted thinking time, like from your perspective?
Totally. It's such a good question. And I think you're right. The whole shift is creating a new kind of pressure on
Yeah.
researchers that I don't think the field has fully grappled with yet.
Yeah.
So when you remove all of the time that's spent on mechanics, you're left sort of standing in front of the hardest part of the job, which is the interpretation, the
Yeah.
recommendation, the so now what, and there's fewer places to hide and a much shorter timeline to get there. But I think that is the biggest opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's where the real sort of identity questions start to emerge, because if AI is handling more of the traditional research workflow, the role is no longer defined by what you do, it's defined by how you think. And that's a really meaningful shift. And I mean, Nikki, one of the reasons why I love your podcast is like I run a research and strategy team.
Yeah.
Not often those two things don't get paired together, they're really separated. And the wall that is collapsing, I think, with AI right now is the wall between research and strategy. And there is a tremendous amount of pressure on researchers to think differently. But the best researchers I've always known have been able to also spend the majority of their time in the sense making when they can.
Yeah. And I think that that's such a great point that you brought up about there are fewer places to hide and less time to hide behind, because when I was younger in my career, I hid behind the craft quite significantly because sense making, analysis, communication, stakeholder management were so scary to me that I was like, well, I'll just spend the next 16 weeks with some affinity diagramming because that's what I will do. And like there was a bit more of an understanding of the time that some of these things can take. And it's both, I think, for researchers, exciting and also scary, because if we haven't been exposed to this strategy side of things, then we're just like, well, all I can do is the craft. I can't do the strategy. I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yes, so it's so true. And I feel for folks who are new in the field
Oh,
who don't have that exposure. And I think there are so many different ways that folks need to be creative and think about how to build those skills alongside the craft and the methodology. But you're right, it is those skills that take time to build, the facilitation, the stakeholder management, the storytelling, the narrative development, really the creativity behind the output of research work and sort of its strategic imperative. That's what's super important right now. And it's certainly where I'm telling my team to spend the majority of their time. But it is like it's a huge identity shift for a lot of people, and the focus and valence of your energy is very different than it used to be.
yeah. I'm curious from your experience and maybe what you've talked to your team about, what are some ways that researchers can, who might be unsure, uncertain, less experience in that space, are there some easy ways or some like concrete ways that they could start up leveling in this space?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. One of the skills that I think is super, super important right now is almost a coaching mindset. And stick with me for a moment because this probably sounds crazy, but when I hire folks, I I hire for folks that are really interested in helping others and like coaching clients, for example.
Yeah.
So not and you have to be strong in the craft, obviously, to be able to do the work, but there's a curiosity and a willingness to sort of jump in and lend a hand that I think is really important. So for younger folks, I would say like the creatives and the people are around you that are doing product work, like don't think of yourself as a cog in a wheel. Think about how you can creatively sort of insert yourself into that process. How can you like figure out how to coach a designer or coach a product manager in terms of how to do better research and start to develop those like little interstitial skills that then sort of cascade into bigger stakeholder management, into storytelling, and think of yourself as less of a part of the process and sort of the interstitial glue. And there's so much in coaching and thinking about yourself as like a player coach in the role that starts to like develop those skills for you.
Yeah.
Is
And
that a weird thing to say?
no, no, not at all. Because I think that the way that, isn't it the way that we continue to learn and cement things in our mind is by explaining them to other people?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, because that helps us work through our processes and our thoughts. So if you sit and coach somebody, you're also doing that for yourself.
That's right. That's absolutely right. That is a much smarter way of saying what I was
Much.
saying. And I think, but I think, I mean, there are other pieces too, obviously. Like
Yeah.
when we've had a few sort of research interns come through our team from different universities. And the thing that I actually tell them to do is when you are on a project with a client, watch the folks on the team who are the best storytellers.
Yeah.
How are they telling? Like really invest in watching and mirroring those folks. And I think as researchers, part of our job is mirroring to some degree. And so there's a natural ability there for folks to lean into that and to really learn and then think about how they can scale that. I also think, I mean, there's so many other skills that folks really need to be building that are more maybe systematic and different ways of thinking. But in terms of like little things you can do in mindsets, that's what I would encourage folks to focus on.
Yeah, I remember hating so much when people used to tell me like be better at storytelling because I was like, I'm a fiction writer. I should be able to, like I should be able to tell a story. I can write a story. I can write fiction. Why can't I story tell fact? I think that what sometimes we get caught up in is like the actual content of the story rather than the way that we deliver it and the audience and like those perspectives. So I think what you're saying about, hey, watch other people do it who do it well and mirror that behavior because the content it's almost like
Yes,
agnostic of storytelling.
totally. Yes, yes.
Yeah. That's super, super. I love that point because it's something that anybody can do is sit down. And if there's nobody at your company, TEDx or some
Totally.
sort of like inspirational talks.
Yes, find the best storytellers out in the world.
Yeah.
Understand what it is about them that is able to give them that sort of narrative fluency and figure out how to extrapolate that to your work, whether you are presenting a single insight, a report, whatever it is. Because the things that are super important right now, Nikki, are communication, systems thinking, facilitation, how a thing is framed, how an insight lands versus,
Yeah.
you know, how it is necessarily presented. And there's so much, I mean, so much of the conversation about research and user research in the last, decade has been like, why can we never get the researchers in the room where decisions are made? And so much of that has been because our insights often don't land with impact. And I think just to bring this back to AI, that's where there's so much opportunity right now. You can use Claude, you can use Cowork, you can use code to be so much more persuasive with your insights where persuasion is important. And there's just so much more opportunity for researchers to see themselves as the type of communicators that can actually be in the room with decision makers. I'm excited for folks to make that identity shift. And I think it's gonna happen. And it is happening.
Yeah. I think so too, because I think that we are both naturally curious, naturally empathetic, and using these types of tools to further us in a way that allows us to showcase decision making is going to be that shift, which then would naturally help us get into that space.
Do you want to get all of your user research questions answered, all while hanging out on your couch in sweatpants? No need to join any live webinars and hope that your question gets answered. No need to Google a million different things and sift through some scattered advice that you don't really know is valid or reliable. Not anymore. I know it sounds too good to be true, but I promise it isn't, because if you become a paid Substack subscriber, you get access immediately to a community filled with user researchers that I am in every single day answering questions. Not only can you hang out on your couch, feel less alone as a user researcher, and get all of your questions answered, not only by an expert, but by a bunch of other user researchers with amazing perspectives and experience, you can do all of that on your couch in sweatpants, and I will be alongside there with you every step of the way. So join my paid Substack, get immediate access, and we can relax together solving all of your user research problems. See you there.
And I'm curious because you brought up system thinking a few times. So I'd love to dig into that if that's possible. It's a big term. And I'm curious, like, from your perspective, what is that shift in that systems thinking looking like for user researchers?
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just to ground it, I mean, we have clients coming to us. It's never been easier to get data and answers and information, right? And every client that we're working with is trying to think a year, 2 years ahead in an environment that is rapidly shifting. And when I think about, you know, folks who are excellent systems thinkers and what that means right now, people on my team are having to zoom way out
Yeah.
from the immediate context. They're having to look at the broader cultural forces at play, really getting into sort of a future casting mindset, and then trying to tie in all the different pieces of data that go alongside that. So I think thinking about market dynamics, organizational incentives, competitive pressures, cultural context, all of those things can come together into a systems thinking lens in a much quicker and more dynamic way than we've ever been able to do before. And I think the task for researchers and what they need to be able to do right now and strategists is help clients zoom in and zoom out and
Mhm.
look at all of those individual pieces and tinker with them. And that is where AI is so incredible. You can do that. You can look at so many different futures. And there's lots of tool sets and different lenses and frameworks that you can use to do that. But there's a dynamicism to the ability to apply systems thinking to a project or to a problem now that we've never been able to do in the time that we have. So if folks are investing their time actually thinking at different altitudes, they're taking the first step, I think, towards becoming better systems thinkers.
I love that because I think what can happen is a lot of us can get siloed into like, okay, here is my job as a user researcher. And for a long time, that's very tactical, right?
Yeah.
I'm going through that whole phase that you talked about recruiting, about moderation, about transcription, about analysis, da 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 da. Da, and this is my little slice, the cog in the wheel, as you said.
Yeah.
This is me as a cog. And I think that what you're talking about with highlighting this importance, this growing importance of systems thinking also highlights the fact that we as researchers, as strategists, the cross collaboration is
Mhm.
so important right now because
Yep.
then you are bringing all of those bits and pieces in together to showcase that more holistic understanding.
Totally. Totally. And it's so important. I mean, the landscape is changing so quickly. And not just, I mean, our clients' context. Everything is changing and shifting. And you have to be able to consider so many different dynamics so quickly. And then this is where actually researchers are so important. I'll tell you one thing that I'm seeing, Nikki, and this is why I have a really strong feeling that research will continue to be incredibly important, despite I think the anxiety and the doomerism that exists, which is that when I'm in a room with executives right now, when I'm in a room with product people, I have never had more clients coming with more ideas about how to solve a problem.
Oh, yeah.
It's insane. Like every client comes with a 10-page ChatGPT generated summary on how to solve a problem. You still need to answer that. You still need to validate it and find a direction. And that is super important. The skill that's required, I think, for researchers to develop is that executive facilitation.
Yes.
Okay, you're all coming with about 1,300 different perspectives on how to solve this problem. You have lots of data. You believe strongly that you've got the right positioning. Let's actually go out and validate that. And you still need those same skills that the researchers have to be able to do that. And I'm seeing that all of the time. Where this comes to systems thinking is then I think to be the most persuasive that you can be, to be the most compelling, communicating your findings back through a systems thinking lens, through a more future casting, future forward mindset is also really important to convincing stakeholders that what you're saying is the right thing.
Yeah, and I love this whole thought of future casting because I feel like we have been not stuck, but for lack of a better word, because I can't think of a synonym, stuck in this feeling of we're doing research for the immediacy, for the immediate moment, for this thing that's on the roadmap, this bug that's been identified, this usability issue that's like a right now thing. And sometimes we get the beautiful kind of luxury of doing discovery research that can inform things later on, but still by and large, even discovery research can be very immediately focused. And I just don't think that we've had the space or the resources or even the training, maybe even to think about how do we apply user research, but to future casting. And I'm curious for those who are maybe new to that, like, do you have any tips or thoughts on how people can get into that mindset when we've been kind of put into the box of like this 2 week sprint and 2 week roadmap kind of vibe?
Totally. It's such a great question. And yes, I have lots of tips. And I think the heart of what makes a great user research to me is somebody who's deeply empathetic.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually a super important skill to apply to more innovation-focused research. Essentially, what we're trying to do is imagine possible futures for folks and think about what their life is going to look like, what problems they're going to be encountering a year from now, 2 years from now, and the Venn diagram between sort of how their perceived challenges might intersect with a product or an opportunity or an area in the market. And I would start there because that's a space that researchers already occupy. But instead of applying that empathy and that problem solving to immediate terms, think about the story that that person needs to tell you in order to be able to articulate what their life is going to look like a year and a half from now. Part of me always comes and brings it back to story because I love qualitative research, Nikki. That is my heart and soul. And I think that that's how getting folks to talk about their experience deeply and empathetically and imagine their future, I think is the first step in taking sort of the qualitative step of that. I think the second is encouraging yourself as a user researcher, a strategist, to take in more information than the qualitative interview or the survey. Like, think much more broadly about cultural context, dynamic markets, and tie that together with story. And then you start to paint a picture about what a real plausible future could look like. And then you can interrogate that from a lot of different ways. So I think those are the things that I think about when innovation research isn't about a new technology. It's about how that new technology is going to solve a problem for someone. So bringing it back to story and empathy for me is really important.
Yeah, it's like it's not, oh, how do we create this new feature that's so innovative, which is, I think, what has happened to us a lot when we like that's kind of almost what innovation research has felt like, but it's rather how does this brand, this company, this product, this whatever intersect with humans?
Yes, exactly. And like, how can you empathetically think about their context in what you know about a shifting market and what you know about a shifting industry? How can you imagine what their future is going to look like? And this is where I think there's so much opportunity to use AI creatively, because when you are thinking about like putting together a journey map as an outcome, you can now work with Claude Code and make that journey map dynamic. You can create those multiple futures, those multiple lenses on a story, and share that back to stakeholders in a way that we've never been able to. There's so much opportunity in communicating and persuasion and being able to express somebody's story, but in a way that we've never been able to. And I think that's really what I want researchers and strategists who are feeling like paralyzed in this moment to think about, is like the things that you love about the work. You can use AI and tooling to amplify those right now.
I think that that's such an amazing point, is like the dynamic nature of the things that we can now create. Because I remember being so irritated about journey maps because I was like, this journey does not exist.
Yeah.
There is a TV on. There's somebody yelling at you. There's
Yes.
something in the background. Like, I think that there is we simplified research to a certain degree to understand ideal states, and we sometimes forgot about the unideal state, which is literally life. And so I
Yes.
think, yeah, that dynamic nature of being able to create a journey map that has context.
Yes. That's such a beautiful way of saying that. And it's such a richer journey. And like, that's the joy of research. Like I love ethnography, right? I love diary studies because I love understanding how a person's context changes over time and what that looks like and means for a product or an outcome. And now we can visualize those things so quickly. And there's such a huge opportunity there for all of us in how we communicate. And I really do think the future of the field is really bright.
Yeah, I think it's different, but very bright. And like for people who are scared of or uncertain of how to use these tools, I think a lot of it is taking the time to experiment. And then we go back to the time to think,
Yes.
you know?
Isn't it scary to be alone with our brains for so long? I mean, there's a real thing here, and you mentioned it at the beginning of this conversation, Nikki, which is that, when you were up and coming researcher and strategist, you hid in the data, right? And there is a truth in this moment is that we can't hide in the data anymore. We have to be really thinking about how we're communicating and what story we're trying to tell with our data. And that can be scary and it can be overwhelming. And I totally understand folks who feel a sense of paralysis in that moment, but you can take little steps, and I think that baby steps are super important. Whatever your next report is, whatever your next, presentation is, take one small part of that, one small part, and experiment. You don't even have to present it. Just start to build the muscle. Put it into co-work and ask it to build you an interactive model for something, and start to ideate and think of yourself not just as an interpreter, as a synthesizer, but as a storyteller, and you can build up that muscle pretty quickly.
And you have the added benefit that everybody is kind of learning to do this right now and like understanding it. Like it's not like you are the only one who's not gone on to co-work and thus you're 5 million years behind.
Yes, totally. And I think people would be really surprised when you download Claude and you get onto co-work for the first time. I mean, I'm a product person. I work within a product agency. It's incredibly user-friendly. The learning curve is lower than folks think. And the first step is always just getting over that fear. But the folks on my team who are avid users of AI tools, it's become a really essential part of their workflow. And maybe, I don't know if this is happy or sad, but one of their good friends. Claude is their friend.
Yeah. No, I completely understand and agree with that because I am so bad at designing things. I hate designing things so much. I hate trying to visualize things because like I'm such a words person. But how nice to take away limitations of your skills. I mean, to a certain degree, it's not going to be the most beautifully designed thing, but it'll get the point across. And you're learning new skills and you're learning how to apply them. So I love that. Like just hop into that whatever tool and try and ask it these questions to make something more dynamic, make something more interactive.
Totally.
Yeah.
And not to sound like Brené Brown here, but there's an opportunity to be brave.
Yes. Yeah.
Be brave as a researcher. Don't, there's someone on my team right now who is working on an incredible new problem. And this is where another really interesting, I think, opportunity in the field is that we're solving new interaction paradigms.
Yes.
There's a nascency to a lot of the types of problems that we're now trying to solve. And there's someone on my team who's thinking about, okay, how do I do user research in a context where we're building a shopping experience for agentic AI that shops on behalf of humans?
Yeah.
And like, what does it look like to do research in that paradigm? And she's experimenting and using Claude to like really test out and iterate on her approach and have it sort of feed back into her methodology. And it's lowered the stress, I think, for her in being able to do a type of research she's never been able to do before. And that is a huge opportunity as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think, as you say, it's not only bright, but we have the ability to continue to define and evolve the craft as per what works best for us and understanding how we want our work to be.
Do you have a sense of how you want your work to be. I mean, you as a researcher, like what do you hope for? And I've just turned into researcher mode. In the next like couple of years, what's your dream?
So I am obsessed right now with Claude Code and things like Lovable because I'm creating things actually, which is so super fun. And actually something that, because you had mentioned how clients are coming to you with, a 10-page ChatGPT brief with all of these things. I have clients coming to me with Lovable prototypes.
Of course. Yes.
And I'm just like, okay, but we're here. Okay, now we have to figure out so many different. It's the new understanding of how do we figure out. Oh, okay, how do we go from this to something that really works in a very holistic nature in a completely new paradigm? Fascinating, and I think that what I'm hoping we are able to do as researchers is education. So leading the front on empathetic, human-centered AI.
Yeah.
And also being able to like continue to evolve the methodologies to be new, to be different, to be holistic, to be all encompassing, to be just like really fascinating.
Yes.
Going back to just being like, holy moly, like what a
Yes.
cool thing to be able to do. I want us to be able to like excite stakeholders in that way.
Yes. 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 I love that. I just got goosebumps because there's been so much, and I understand, and I don't mean that diminutively, but we've shifted so much in user research to optimizing. But we have this whole new opportunity in front of us to really get back to experimentation.
Yes.
And it's
Fun.
fun. And that research can be fun. And that's part of what I'm seeing. Like folks on my team are having so much fun. And I really do think that the inflection point of AI and really how that's changed the game in terms of what's possible and where we can spend our time has been a huge, huge part of that.
I agree. And I love that. Get back to experimentation, get back to fun. Paper prototyping was so much fun. We can do that digitally now with AI. It's like there's so much opportunity. And I think it's shifting through it, understanding it, kind of putting aside like doom and gloom. It is scary. There's a lot. It's scary because it's change. Change is scary. Angie, I could literally talk to you for the remainder of the day. We are right at the end of our time. So I'm curious for the audience who is listening, if there's one thing based on this conversation or something that we haven't covered that you would recommend people start doing right now to, understand their new identity shift and understand what that might look like for them, what would you recommend?
Yes, it's a great question. And I think I've said this already, but the first is to embrace this new world of researchers as creatives. And the first thing I would say, if you don't have Claude already, get Claude. It's worth it. Take the next part of whatever deliverable, whatever outcome you are tracking toward. Take one story, one user story, one job to be done, one vignette, whatever, and get into co-work and ask it questions to help you explore a new way of communicating or telling the story that's in the data that you want to tell. And like I said, you don't even have to present it, but just start doing it and see what comes up, because I think folks will be really surprised, A, at the quality, and B, how inspired they are by what they're able to do.
Oh, I love that. The era of user researchers as creatives. Oh, that is a beautiful and perfect place to end. Angie, thank you so much. That was such a fun conversation. And I'm now in like one of those vibes where I'm like, now I want to just do everything all at once. So I really appreciate that. And I hope I'm sure the audience has definitely felt that same way. And there's so many nuggets in there for them to take away. So thank you for taking the time and sharing your wisdom.
So happy. Thanks for having me, Nikki.
Awesome. And thank you so much to everybody for listening. I really appreciate it. And I will talk to you soon.